This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Wendy Griffith. A growing number of Democrats are lining up to support the impeachment of President Donald Trump after allegations he withheld aid to pressure Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden and his son. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is holding a closed-door meeting today with members of her caucus to discuss whether it's time to impeach. Our Charlene Aaron has been following this story and joins us now with more. Charlene.
That's right, Wendy. President Trump remains defiant over recent allegations that he withheld aid to Ukraine. In comments to reporters ahead of a speech at the United Nations today, he repeated what he's been saying all along, that he has done nothing wrong.
I think it's ridiculous. It's a witch hunt. I'm leading in the polls. They have no idea how they stop me. The only way they can try is through impeachment. When you see the readout of the call, which I assume you'll see at some point, you'll understand. That call was perfect. There was no pressure put on them whatsoever. But there was pressure put on with respect to Joe Biden. What Joe Biden did for his son, that's something they should be looking at.
Monday, the Washington Post reported that the president ordered his staff to freeze nearly $400 million in aid to Ukraine, a few days before the July phone call, in which he allegedly pressured the country's leader to investigate the Biden family. 7 freshman Democrat lawmakers who served in the military and national security said that if the allegation against the president is true, it's impeachable. Republicans say they don't have enough information yet and point to the allegations against Joe Biden's actions as vice president when his son worked with a Ukrainian company that was under scrutiny by a government prosecutor. Republican Senator Mitt Romney says the allegation against the president is serious and calls for the release of more information.
I think it'd be very helpful to get to the bottom of the facts, to follow the law, to get us there. That would include the whistleblower as well as a transcript of the conversation.
And meanwhile, President Trump said he withheld the military aid from Ukraine because other European nations weren't contributing enough. Wendy?
Thanks, Charlene. President Trump also says the U.S. would continue to put pressure on the Iranian government. He made those remarks speaking to world leaders at the UN General Assembly today.
Hoping to free itself from sanctions, the regime has escalated its violent and unprovoked aggression. In response to Iran's recent attack on Saudi Arabian oil facilities, we just imposed the highest level of sanctions on Iran's central bank and sovereign wealth fund. All nations have a duty to act. No responsible government should subsidize Iran's bloodlust. As long as Iran's menacing behavior continues, sanctions will not be lifted. They will be tightened. Iran's leaders will have turned a proud nation into just another cautionary tale of what happens when a ruling class abandons its people and embarks on a crusade for personal power and riches.
The Supreme Court in the UK has ruled that Prime Minister Boris Johnson's suspension of Parliament was illegal. During a speech in New York ahead of his meeting with President Trump, Johnson said the ruling will not stop his government pushing forward with Brexit.
I have the highest respect, of course, for our judiciary and for the independence of our courts, but I must say I strongly disagree with this judgment. And we in the UK will not be deterred from getting on and delivering on the will of the people to come out of the EU on October the 31st, because that is what we were mandated to do. And we will simultaneously refuse to be deterred from delivering on what I think you would all expect, an exciting, dynamic domestic agenda intended to make our country ever more attractive to live in and to invest in.
And as he left the event, Boris said the obvious thing was to now call a general election. And we'll have more on these stories and others this evening on Faith Nation. You can watch it right here on the CBN News Channel. Well, climate change activists have made headlines the last couple of days, from 16-year-old Greta Thunberg's passionate speech at the UN, telling world leaders when it comes to climate change, quote, "You are failing us," to demonstrators in Washington, D.C. working to shut down traffic in the nation's capital to bring attention to their climate change concerns. Brad Palumbo with the Washington Examiner says the climate change protests are just a Trojan horse for socialism, and he joins us now with more. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks.
Well, first of all, a dramatic week with the climate change movement, but you say the self-proclaimed climate change rebels have other bigger goals in mind. How so?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm working right here out of Washington, D.C., where some of the biggest protests are going on. So you have entire streets that were shut down yesterday, just a quarter mile from my office. So I've seen these protests up close. I've looked at the groups organizing them and their demands, and it's clear to me that they're actually not too concerned about climate change or carbon emissions. Because think about it for a second. If you were trying to reduce carbon emissions, would your plan really be to clog up traffic all day so you have cars sitting around just spewing out emissions all day? Would your plan really involve, as some of these viral videos have involved that you've seen from the protests, twerking and littering and throwing confetti on the ground? You know, so these are not serious protests, and they actually are in support of a sinister socialist agenda.
Not sure how twerking will help either way. But anyway, Greta Thunberg, the young girl, told leaders at the United Nations they had stolen her dreams. But you say it's really not about the environment, but truly about socialism.
Yeah, so it's not about the environment, truly. And I think the people who have stolen Greta Thunberg's dreams are her parents and the other adults that are unfortunately using her to push a political agenda, which I think is wrong and I think is immoral. When you look at that political agenda, when you look at, for example, shut down Washington, D.C., the group that organized the D.C. climate protests, on their website, they proudly boast that they are co-sponsored with the Democrat Socialists of America and labor and left-wing labor groups. And then their agenda calls for the Green New Deal, which is a Trojan horse for socialism if there ever was one. You know, these people are telling us they care about climate change, but then they're pushing a policy platform that includes universal socialist health care, government jobs for everyone, and all other sorts of socialist goodies that are not related to climate. So that's how you know that the protests are disingenuous at best. That's
a really good point, Brad, and that's the first time I've actually heard that. What else do you think these activists are wanting out of all these protests and media?
Well, part of it is self-glorifying, and that they get to make headlines and they get to call attention to themselves and their activism. And part of it is that green rhetoric has been one of the more effective ways of mainstreaming big government socialist economic policies, whether it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Green New Deal, or Elizabeth Warren's radical plans to address climate change. And what gets lost in all this conversation is that you don't actually have to embrace socialism to combat climate change. There are free market solutions too. You know, if you end subsidies for fossil fuels, that's a pro-market move that would help us move to renewable energy. If you promote nuclear energy, which none of these socialists seem to want to do, nuclear energy is the lowest emissions, most efficient source of energy we have available. And the fact that they're not willing to promote it tells you that what they care about isn't truly the environment.
Brad, do you think most of the American public sees this or takes this movement seriously?
I think a lot of people do take it seriously, and a lot of people do take kind of the media's coverage of it seriously. And I think part of the problem there is that the mainstream liberal media almost lionizes some of these activists and some of the protests and doesn't really call attention to the uglier sides of them. You know, for instance, I've found countless viral clips and videos and photos taken by people at the scenes of demonstrators littering or marching around with "capitalism must end" posters and all sorts of craziness, but you don't see that on the CNN depiction of it. You see a much more sanitized version. So I think that some of the American people do probably support this, but that's for two reasons. One, they're seeing a sanitized version in the media coverage, and two, they're not really aware of the radical platform that's being pushed behind the scenes in these movements.
All right, Brad Palumbo with the Washington Examiner. Thanks so much for your time and your insights. We appreciate it. Well, South Korea says nuclear negotiations between the U.S. and North Korea could resume within 2 to 3 weeks. South Korea's National Intelligence Service briefed lawmakers about the prospect yesterday in Seoul. This just hours after President Trump said another meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un could happen soon. Kim says another summit between him and Trump could take place this year if the two countries continue their progress. Well, the crisis in Venezuela is not over, but members of one group hope their latest action helps. The Organization of American States has invoked a Cold War-era treaty in an effort to increase international pressure and force Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from power. They agreed yesterday to investigate and arrest senior officials and others in the Venezuelan government suspected of crimes such as drug trafficking, money laundering, and the financing of terrorism. They stopped short of endorsing military action. The group includes the U.S. and more than a dozen Latin American countries. Coming up, how one organization is working all across the globe to ensure religious freedom. And before we go to the break, here's a look at what's trending on CBNNews.com.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Welcome back. This past Saturday was the International Day of Peace, and according to a recent UN report, there are more than 70 million people currently displaced around the world. The global Christian humanitarian organization World Relief has been at work the last 12 years to try and change that. The organization partners with volunteers from local churches around the world who step into conflict zones, putting their lives in danger in an effort to break cycles of violence and conflict. And joining us now with more on this is Charles Franzen with World Relief. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, why is this day so important to your organization, World Relief?
Well, the World Day of Peace, International Day of Peace, is extremely important because this is a day in which we can highlight the conflicts that are taking place around the world and all the efforts that are being made by churches when they're unified together to fight hard against the conflicts and to create spaces for peace and reconciliation to take place.
Charles, how are volunteers around the world working to combat religious persecution?
Well, volunteers around the world are working hard in many different places. I think the important areas that we're working in, various parts of the world, we are actually organizing village peace committees, which work together with local communities and with local churches to unify themselves and to be able to bring not only peace and reconciliation to the areas that they're living in, but also developmental activities, program activities that helps the church become stronger and helps the people within the community strengthen and move towards development.
Can you tell us where the volunteers are at work?
Yes, we have volunteers working in a number of different places, but especially in the conflict areas. And we have two major programs at the present time in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Central Africa, and in South Sudan, which is also a neighboring country to Congo, but facing a number of challenges as well as far as conflict is concerned.
Very dangerous areas also. Well, switching gears a little, what does President Trump's speech yesterday at the UN General Assembly mean for international religious freedom?
Yeah, we welcome President Trump's speech on religious freedom. It's extremely important. People should have a right to express their faith openly and without any hindrance. But we also know that that is very difficult in some places. I think for World Relief, what's essential, since we're an organization that has been resettling refugees for many, many years, for more than 40 years, I think that the president also should look closely at refugee resettlement in the United States and allow the Christian refugees who have been persecuted and who have not been allowed to come to the U.S. He should seriously consider whether those doors should be opened again so that those people can enter the U.S.
All righty, Charles Franson with World Relief, thanks so much for your time and your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Still ahead, we're going to switch gears and look at a very different problem in the church, overeating and obesity. And we'll hear one doctor's very successful plan to help people lose weight by eating, quote, God's food.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Protect your sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome. You'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
you need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a Better Gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
Obesity is rampant in the church as gluttony has become an acceptable sin. Now, one doctor is fighting back with a program to defeat this epidemic of overeating, and people are shedding millions of pounds. CBN health reporter Lori Johnson shows us how.
Overall, the church does a pretty good job avoiding unhealthy things like smoking, alcohol, drugs, and promiscuity, but misses the mark when it comes to obesity.
Research shows people who begin attending church in their 20s are more likely to become obese by middle age than those who don't go to church. This especially troubled doctor and Christian Daniel Amen.
I actually prayed about it because I went to my own church and saw them serving hot dogs, donuts, ice cream, bacon, sausage. And I'm like, they're giving you all this food to kill you early. Save them, then kill them.
He feels it's high time the church deals with its weight problem.
You know, it's just not okay when your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit for churches to basically poison you with low-quality food and think, well, that's what we've always done, so it's okay.
As a brain imaging specialist, Dr. Amen published 2 studies showing as weight increases, the brain actually shrinks. It's widely known that obesity lowers quality of life, adds millions to healthcare costs, and can lead to an early grave. Nationwide, the South leads the pack.
And that's also where there are more evangelical Christian churches. And I'm not okay with that, you know, the Bible Belt widening.
With that in mind, Dr. Amen co-developed a church-based weight loss program known as the Daniel Plan. While the classes last 6 weeks, the diet is intended as a lifelong discipline.
I feel so good now. You know, I swim a mile a day. I was in a wheelchair at one time. I couldn't keep my balance, but now look at me.
75-year-old Phyllis Neal joined the Daniel Plan at her Yorktown, Virginia church. She suffered from pain, depression, and couldn't sleep due to a number of health issues.
Vicodin and Ambien and Prozac, and I was just on so much stuff.
Phyllis ultimately lost 65 pounds, stopped taking medications, felt happy, and began sleeping like a baby. She attributes much of her success to the faith element of the plan.
And God just took control, and He has just blessed my life so much.
Her 75-year-old husband, Dennis, got on board too.
I lost 65 pounds just by eating God's food.
Dennis and Phyllis believe so much in the program that they now teach others.
One of the things I tell people in our classes is if God came down today and said, look, I want you to do this task for me, and then you tell him that you're not physically fit to do it because you're overweight, that doesn't work.
The Neals emphasize the importance of breaking free from processed foods because of ingredients like MSG, industrialized oils, and high fructose corn syrup.
Diabetes, cancer, all of it's related to sugar. And we've got to get that out of our system. We've been hijacked by the food industry.
Instead of packaged items, Phyllis fills their kitchen with natural whole foods, free of chemicals and sweeteners. Chicken strips, cut up vegetables, boiled eggs, beans, cheese, and nuts.
You'll see that I keep fruit available. My grandchildren come in the house. They don't ask for candy here. They go over and get a piece of fruit, and their parents are so happy for them. You know?
Drinking plenty of water helps us manage our weight because, believe it or not, sometimes our brain tricks us into thinking we're hungry when we're actually just thirsty.
People adhering to the Daniel Plan exercise regularly and attend support group meetings. So while obesity continues to plague the church, Christians nationwide are shedding millions of pounds thanks to the Daniel Plan, named after the Bible hero whose diet reflected his commitment to God. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thanks, Lori. Great tips there. Well, you can see more helpful and important health-related stories, including how you can eat to beat diseases, why drinking tea is good for you, and a look at the healthy benefits of giving. These stories and much more tonight on Healthy Living at 9:30 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel. Miraculous survival of a 5-year-old girl after her suicidal dad jumps in front of a subway train.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
And finally, a New York woman is thanking God and the angels who protected her for saving her daughter's life in a subway station. Police say the woman's husband was apparently suicidal and jumped in front of an oncoming train with his 5-year-old little girl. Eyewitnesses were shocked, and one overheard his conversation with his wife just minutes before it happened.
I heard him telling the wife that, you look out for the other 2 kids, I'm going to take her to school. And then he said, I love you.
It's after that, police say the man who was on and off medication for depression jumped. He was hit and died. But miraculously, his daughter found a safe spot on the track and laid down. She was not seriously injured. 2 other people who jumped to help the girl were injured, but are expected to be okay. Someone captured video on their phone of people helping and comforting the little girl after the accident.
Everybody that helped, especially at the moment of the tragedy, the baby's in perfect condition. Thank God. And we're moving forward now. Like I said, thank God for the baby, and to everyone that jumped to help her in the moment of need.
Thank God she lived. That's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. We hope you'll join us next time. From all of us here, have a great day, and God bless you.